Have you ever considered dying for the politicians in Washington? Is paying all your taxes to Israel and Ukraine not enough for you, and you want to leave a lasting mark on the world? Do you want to pick your role in the military before getting drafted into World War III? The U.S. Army offers new recruits the ability to get vaccinated, learn important facts about gender, spread democracy across the world, and fight for politicians' right to insider trade. Make sure to join up before we make you. By joining the Army, you will be fighting to make the world safer for the ruling class. Becoming a part of the military-industrial complex is one of the most secure ways to earn income during an economic crisis. Join the Army instead of buying Bitcoin and thinking for yourself.
Fuck that shit. I'm not joining the Army. I don't know what it was about that ad, but it pissed me off. You're not here to listen to ads about pharmaceutical products, war, or messaging from PodConf and the CIA. And I'm not here to propagate those messages. I'm here to smoke non-KYC cigarettes, drive my Jeep truck, and kick ass. We are about to listen to the most thermodynamically sound duo in the world of journalism. It's October and not time to be a gay bear. If you are driving while listening to this podcast, make sure to unbuckle your seatbelt and pour yourself a glass of whiskey. This is Kaylee Welch, and you are listening to the Bugle Weekly, the most credentialed Bitcoin podcast in the world.
Welcome back to the Bugle. We just, it's been a crazy week, and it's a wild time. Like the Army is starting to recruit again. It looks like World War III is on the brink. Could start with Israel going and blowing up Iran's Bitcoin miners. What do you think? What are you hearing about the situation on the ground? Are you bullish still?
I think it's really important for listeners to understand that they shouldn't be worried about the economy. Everything's fine. This is actually good for the economy. And they should remain bullish. Yes, Bitcoin did fall a little bit. Iran kind of, screwed up the beginning of October by launching some missiles. But yeah, I think like the defense contractors are bullish. I think we're going to see companies like Raytheon and Lockheed stacking sats.
And that's going to be huge. It's going to create a lot of jobs. There's going to be a lot of good salaries going up. There's a lot of orange pilled employees at places like Raytheon and Lockheed Martin. And they have DCA plans. Like, this is going to be extremely good for the Bitcoin price, for the economy, too. I mean, basically you've got missiles being shot at one country, and they're using missiles to try and shoot at those missiles. So the missile manufacturers, they are eating right now. They are extremely happy.
Yeah. I do have a contact in Tel Aviv that told me that they are running Bitcoin meetups in the bomb shelters whenever Iran fires missiles. And like, it's a great strategy. It's a great strategy over there because, when everybody's running down to the bomb shelters, they're kind of stuck there. They can't leave, right? So you can tell them about Bitcoin, and they're probably terrified that they're going to like go out of the bomb shelter and find that their house is blown up. And you can explain to them in that moment that like, hey, if you had your private keys right now, you could leave with all your wealth and it wouldn't be that big of a deal. Hezbollah, Iran, they can't blow up your private keys.
Right. It's almost like the trope from a movie or a TV show where like the guy who lives in the building, he gets stuck on the elevator with the hot girl that lives down the hallway. And it's finally like his chance to talk to her. It's like they're kind of like stuck there on the broke elevator. Well, these bombing attacks in Israel, it creates the same situation, but now it's like you're now in a bomb shelter full of people who you can orange pill. They can't leave, and you can tell them like how not worried you are and how the economy is fine, and they'll really look up to you. He's gonna be so calm and you'll be kind of like a source of wisdom, and you just have a really good opportunity to explain and to orange pill them right there on the spot.
Yeah. I mean, imagine being in a bomb shelter in that scenario with somebody like Sly Goomba that just has like so much wisdom when it comes to
Can you
Bitcoin.
imagine? Can you imagine if we had Dennis Porter in every bomb shelter in Tel Aviv?
Well, like a lot of like Christian churches have figured this out for a while, right? It's this idea of the mega church, which is, they'll have one campus where they'll have a pastor, speak at, and then they'll get a bunch of people to watch it on projector screens across all these other churches. And I think we can have the same attitude with Bitcoin meetups, which is we do mega Bitcoin meetups. So we have a bunch of satellite campuses all across the world, all across the country. Um, and we could broadcast Dennis Porter to the masses. And what's kind of
Right, like
crazy is we could use Zuckerberg's new technology of
right,
live dubbing, and so he can actually be translated into everyone's language. And imagine Dennis Porter transcending cultural and language barriers. How quickly we'll end the Federal Reserve that way.
right, like in the depths of the Great Depression, and when World War II was starting in the United States, there was the American people would sit down every night and they would turn on the radio and they would listen to President Franklin Delano Roosevelt's fireside chats. And you'd say like the only thing that there's to be afraid of is fear itself. And he would give these really great speeches. And like if we had like Dennis Porter's fireside chats, orange pill chats, like every night, everybody tuned in to Spaces or they tuned into a live podcast and they could listen to that. And he could explain to them like how Bitcoin has already won and how the economy is fine and how Bitcoin fixes climate change and Bitcoin fixes this war in the Middle East and all this stuff. And that we all have the right to self-custody and that the government protects that right for us because of people like him. If we had
Well,
that, I think that like this would really usher in like this bull market, like this millennials would like achieve their hero's journey, and we could succeed like the GI generation did in World War II in defeating, fascism and communism.
yeah, I mean, I think we can do communication and propaganda better during World War III.
Right. Like we have more podcasts than anybody else. Like what are people going to think about during World War III? They're going to be listening to podcasts. They're going to listen to influencers kind of telling them what to do. Like imagine if we had this many Bitcoin podcasts in 2020 when they were doing the lockdowns. Like they never could have pulled off what they did if we had more podcasts back then.
Roosevelt said the only thing to fear is fear itself. And
Right.
the only reason why he said that was because they didn't have Bitcoin back then. Because today we know the only thing to fear is not having enough Bitcoin.
Right. And it's really scary when you are going through the worst, economic times the world had ever seen at that point. And one of the worst wars, they called it a world war, in fact, was going on, and they didn't have anything to fix it. They didn't have Bitcoin. They didn't have the solution. And it's like they didn't know that it would be, 80, 90 years before that solution was finally discovered.
I mean, what do you think the odds are that the weapon that Hitler was searching for, the Wunderwaffe, was Bitcoin?
Imagine if he found it is the scary thing that I think that to think about, the United States and the other allies were working so hard to develop a nuclear weapon. And if the Germans were working to develop the thing that fixed war and made those nuclear weapons obsolete, it could have changed the course of history.
100%.
But imagine just how much further hyper-Bitcoinization would be along if they did discover it in the 1940s.
Well, what's kind of crazy is, they might not have had all of the technology to properly do it, but if we went back in time, with the Bitcoin node, the white paper, and like a couple miners, a couple ASICs, it could even be GPUs. And we presented that to them, it'd probably be enough to reverse engineer.
Interesting. Thinking about reverse engineering it. Like, could you reverse engineer it? Like, how far back in history could you have gone and given somebody the white paper and an example of the chain, and they could have reversed engineered it from there? How many
Well,
thousands of years?
I wouldn't even say thousands of years. There's like two things that allow for people to comprehend Bitcoin. One of which is you need electricity, right? So unless there's electricity, people can't really comprehend what's going on here, because Bitcoin's essentially a digital electric battery of sorts, right?
Right.
And then the second thing that they need democracy, because
True.
humanity was essentially living in the dark ages until George Washington, kind of gave a ass kicking to the stupid funny talkers.
So it's almost like humanity discovered the first, like, if you go back to the Avengers, like those stones that guy has to collect out of his glove. It's like the first stone was democracy. So the Greeks, they found that stone. And the next stone was electricity, which was Thomas Edison, who discovered that, which when he had the light bulb moment in his head. And then we had those two. We needed a third. We needed to solve the Byzantine generals problem. And so once that third stone was recovered, now we can fix anything with democracy, electricity, and decentralization.
Yeah, I mean, I would argue that the Declaration of Independence was about as revolutionary as the Bitcoin white paper, because
No doubt about it.
Had that never been written, had the Constitution never been, like, the Constitution was essentially a right? It was like Bitcoin consensus. It's like, how do you get a bunch of nodes, a bunch of, individuals all around the country that was rapidly growing in size and scale, population. How do you get them to all come to consensus with each other and not try to double spend and do all these various things?
Right. You need that independence.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the big issues I have with Hermann Hoppe, is like, he's not a Bitcoiner. He's not orange pilled. He obviously doesn't listen to 40 hours of Bitcoin podcasts. And he thinks that, like, democracy is a bad thing. But democracy would have never been, like, Bitcoin would have never been possible without democracy first.
Right. It goes back one more document further back in history. It goes back to the Magna Carta. Magna Carta was when, the first charter that established the principle that the government, the people, and the king, even the king, they were subject to rule. They rule by thermodynamics. In that acknowledgement, coupled with democracy and electricity, enabled somebody to create the first thermodynamically sound solution to all of human problems.
So we all know that electricity was discovered when Ben Franklin was flying his kite, right?
Right. I think I misinterpreted what the first person to invent electricity. I said Thomas Edison, and not Benjamin Franklin.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess maybe Edison was the first to harness it, but you could argue that Benjamin Franklin, catching lightning with a kite to go into a glass jar. I mean, that's, in my opinion, a legitimate discovery or use of electricity. And
he was using stranded energy. Like, that was a Bitcoiner thing to do. Lightning is stranded energy.
Yeah, I mean, it could be argued that essentially Ben Franklin was like the original Steve Barber.
Yeah, it's like Steve Barber. It's like his great grandfather. At least in spirit, it's like his spirit grandfather.
Which is kind of sad that we're saying that Steve Barber's a Canadian. He's not even an American. So he has no patriotism, I don't think. He could be a patriotic.
Right.
He can
Yeah, Steve
understand
Barber's
that.
loyal to Ottawa.
Well, he's a non-compliant Bitcoiner. I don't know if you remember this story that we ran a while back about him, but he was essentially running a protest in Ottawa and upsetting Trudeau.
That's right.
They were trying to ban Bitcoin mining up there, calling it intentional climate change. And he took some containers full of miners and were berating the residents with noise. It's kind of like what Fred Thiel's doing in Texas.
Yeah, that is, we're going to only see more unrest and just a lot of protests like this. And unfortunately, Bitcoin miners are the most profitable way to, really piss off the people in your community that you're mad at.
Well, I think there's a good tale of two different stories, which is what Fred Thiel and Marathon Digital are doing in Texas, and then what Steve Barber is doing did in Ottawa, which is, Fred Thiel is terrorizing, residents of this local community, just like, average people. And Steve was going off after non-compliant politicians. And so I think, if you're looking at things from, the Bitcoin lens, most of us are definitely on the side of, normal average individuals and not the non-compliant politicians. And so I think there's a lesson to be learned, which is don't be like Fred Thiel.
Right. Yeah, of course. Definitely. Speaking of climate change, there's a pretty interesting story that we covered this week. It looks like a lot of global leadership, economic leadership and central bankers have come together to help solve some of the climate risks involved with these wars going on with Ukraine and Israel.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, so there's two interesting topics here, which we can talk about, which is one is that, BlackRock and some very prominent financial institutions are gifting the Israeli and Ukrainian governments climate carbon tokens, essentially to offset all the pollution that they're off-putting as a result of this war. And they actually get double bonus points. I didn't include this in my article, but when you're fighting a defensive war, those climate tokens actually double in value. Whereas if you're offensive, they half in value. So Russia theoretically should be buying 4 times as many climate tokens as Ukraine is, and vice versa for all the.
And what if they run out of these climate tokens? What happens? Are they able to continue to prosecute their war strategy?
Well, I think it'd be much more difficult for them because, a lot of people, climate activists are generally very consistent, right, with the things that they target and focus on. And they understand that war emissions are not any different than any other type of emissions. They get just as upset over Iron Dome missiles fired as they do, just general electric consumption, in the United States.
Lights, like Christmas lights or Halloween lights.
Christmas lights, video games. That's one that, a lot of environmental activists have been going after is, because video games use a lot of electricity, AI computing, being a big one. Manufacturing, they don't like manufacturing because oftentimes that consumes a lot of electricity, and, as we all know, electricity consumption directly correlates into pollution, into creating carbon.
Right. So are these carbon tokens, how easy is it to swap in and out of USDT Tether on liquid with these tokens? Is the market liquidity growing?
Well, it hasn't been like officially tokenized on a blockchain yet. So that's one of the things that's very difficult about them is they don't have any sort of interoperability with other blockchains. And there
And you
aren't,
could be rugged. You could be rugged. These are like custodial tokens.
yeah. I mean, surprisingly, Coinbase has not recognized it yet. And they've actually moved to make this more difficult by delisting Tether. I don't know if you saw that, but that happened this week.
They delisted them in Europe. Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, they're delisting Tether from Europe, so they're making it more difficult for the Ukrainians to swap to USDT if needed.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to be directly cashing these in, for their intended purpose. I don't think there's going to be any corruption. And part of the reason why is because all these tokens exist in BlackRock's database, and they can kind of track and watch where it goes. And I don't think BlackRock. I'd be very shocked if an institution like BlackRock would be as non-compliant as to, trying to utilize those carbon tokens for ulterior motives, whether it be, purchasing real estate in the area or whether it be, essentially operating as a front for agencies like the CIA to launder those carbon credits into somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I think
so. I just had a question. If there's other countries right now who are fighting war, Myanmar is a good example. Are they eligible to receive these double carbon credits from the world's top, BlackRock and other global elites?
I don't know. It really depends on if there's any sort of incentive for BlackRock to be operating there. Because if BlackRock has some sort of advantage in creating favor with the Myanmar government, then yes. Like if there's cheap labor to be exploited, if there's real estate to be acquired, if there's loans to be given, BlackRock will be interested. But I don't know enough about the specifics of what's happening in Myanmar to make any sort of definitive.
Something notable that I read, I think it was last year, and then I saw it again a few months ago, is the rebel government of Myanmar. Their official legal tender is USDT. So they're using Tether as their official currency.
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm curious why they don't use Bitcoin instead. It seems like a no-brainer.
I don't know if do you think BlackRock is pro-Tether or anti-Tether? I can't really tell.
That is a good question. I don't know what BlackRock's relationship with Franklin Templeton is, but I know that Tether is very close to Franklin Templeton.
Yeah, so the carbon credit, I wanted to go off of something here. So like, people are getting concerned about climate change across the board, and as credentialed individuals, we're here to tell you that, climate change is real and you should trust the scientists. But there's been a lot of theories that there's been some weather manipulation recently.
Right.
Which, could be plausible. We've known that the U.S. government has manipulated weather in the past. I think officially they'd probably have to deny their involvement in it for national security reasons because they don't want to allow other countries to know the full levels of sophistication they have in regards to this. But there are theories that the government is manipulating the weather for the storms to be worse so that people start believing in climate change.
Interesting. So other than the one we're all familiar with, chemtrails, what are the other ways that are proven that they use to control the weather?
Well, the thing that's hard about this stuff is there's not a ton of like general non-classified knowledge on these topics because a lot of what was done initially with testing the weather manipulation was done in the Vietnam War. and there was all sorts of, crazy stuff going on there. But, what they primarily did in the Vietnam War was they would do cloud seeding. So they would go and they'd spray chemicals into the clouds to make them bigger and make it start raining.
And that caused flooding, and like I think they had to close Dubai or Alibaba's or Abu Dhabi, excuse me, their airport a few months ago because they created too many clouds and it caused way too much rainfall in Dubai, Abu Dhabi area.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a serious issue. Like, manipulating the weather, can be done to, like try and water your plants or whatever they were doing in Abu Dhabi. But it could get out of hand too. I feel like it's kind of playing with the weather or playing with fire almost.
Yeah.
And so we would hope, like, this is one of the things, like, as credentialed journalists, of like why the institution of journalism is so important, because you need credentialed people to ask these types of questions to hold government accountable. Are you manipulating the weather? Are you playing with fire? Are you potentially, destroying people's lives? And is it actually for national security reasons? Because, like, one of the things that I'm the most concerned about is that it's not just about teaching people about climate change. That's a very important issue. If we want these carbon credit markets to be adopted, the use of blockchain to be widespread, people have to believe in climate change, right?
Right.
But there's also the question of, are they intentionally doing this to grab land where there's, valuable resources to be extracted? And that's a story that I've been seeing come up this week that I thought was pretty interesting in North Carolina.
Yeah, what was the incentive for the land grab in Western North Carolina? What do they want there? It's not the barbecue.
So, well, there are rare earth metals that are used in electronics that are, from my understanding of a few credentialed news articles that I read, are largely centered in this region in North Carolina that was impacted. And so that one small region is responsible for, pretty much all the world's electronics, of having the proper materials. And I mean, that was a pretty interesting thing to learn about this week, that, it's not just China where electronics manufacturing is, very centralized, but also the United States, because the materials needed to make them are over there. And so maybe, there's individuals like, so that, when you're diving into kind of these conspiracy theories, you kind of have to ask a lot of questions and not just come to conclusions right off the bat. And so, you could argue even that targeting these materials to try and, kind of consolidate the land ownership and being able to extract them, that could be an attempt to better fight climate change, because instead of, and this is something that came up in the VP debate, instead of shipping these materials across the ocean to be made into electronics and then shipped back, that could be manufactured in the US.
Right. And that would be very good for the economy. I mean, that would be great for Bitcoin as well. So it's like, should we see that as something that it's, there's not a lot of unclassified evidence that this is nefarious, so we should just believe in climate change and it's going to benefit us?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of incentives here, and I think it's important to just, like, while we need to question government, and while we know they do bad things and they're non-compliant, and we can list off a litany reasons, like, even when you go into conspiracy theories like the Oklahoma City bombing or 9/11, if you believe that the government, was in on it in some way, you have to at least have the perspective of they were doing it for our good, right? They were doing it for national security reasons. There was something larger at play.
They're also, one of the things specifically that they're looking for that they need to source globally that's available in Western North Carolina is quartz. So there is a specific mineral in that specific area that it would just greatly benefit them to be able to come in and kind of get a lot of mineral rights on that land.
Well, a lot of this like kind of goes into the VP debate. Did you watch any of that? I watched a little bit of it, but I'll admit I didn't watch the whole thing.
Yeah, I watched pretty much the whole thing. It was like, I think you noted this off air. It started really hot, right? Like they went right into which one of you guys, how would you use Iran if you were Israel right now? They were like, let's fix the economy right now. How would you do it?
Yeah. I mean, there were a lot of really interesting topics. One thing that I was kind of interested in was that JD Vance was talking about bringing manufacturing domestically, which kind of tied into my thoughts on why the weather manipulation, if it was happening, could have been happening. But also, one of the things that he wanted to do was to import war domestically, and he wanted the U.S., if there was going to be a war happening at all, he wanted the U.S. to be as involved as possible with it, because the U.S. has one of the greenest militaries in the world.
Right, exactly. It was like, if we are going to be the policemen of the world, if we're going to spread democracy, we're the ones that can do it with the least amount of impact to the climate. And so that's why it should be us. And that's why we should take this leadership role in spreading this throughout the globe. And that kind of goes with Bitcoin as well, right? Like if the United States is the leader with mining, control of the network, and just the reserve asset treasury, it can really help make it a greener network.
Yeah, I mean, you have to kind of think about it. So, like, why do we want all the Bitcoin mining in the U.S.? So, like, Dennis Porter frequently talks about, like, how Bitcoin mining is so great for renewable energies and energy sources and incentivizing them, right?
Right.
And, like, that is a direct result from living in a democracy. And it's something that people cannot comprehend in these dictatorships. And part of the reason why is because of the superior public education that's happening here. Because, you go into these dictatorships and in the public schools, they just brainwash people. But literally none of that happens here. They teach people history correctly. While you're pledging allegiance to the flag, you're not pledging it to like some sort of Stalinist, Maoist type, photo on a wall. You're pledging it to, the American people and the economy. You're pledging that as an adult, when you get a job, you're going to pay taxes and you're going to, be patriotic and support the wars and, worry about things like climate change. You don't get that in dictatorships. And that's why, the U.S. could be gearing up for a direct invasion of Iran to make sure that they actually follow through with their climate goals.
And think about the education system here in the United States a little bit, and how much better it is than almost everywhere else in the world. Imagine if we had, a bill where it was mandated that at a certain grade and every year you got Bitcoin orange pilling education in your curriculum in public schools.
Yeah, I mean, seeing as how good Bitcoin is for the climate, I think we're very, very close to getting to that point. Like, I mean, could you imagine if Dennis Porter was the Secretary of Education, how quickly things could improve?
Maybe that's what he's gunning for. Maybe that's what he's been trying to get to this whole time.
Well, I think Brady Swenson's trying to give him a run for his money.
That's true. I think it'd be crazy if they just put Swan's blog as like the resource for the Department of Education for orange pilling people.
Yeah. So, we know that Citigroup uh essentially handpicked Obama's cabinet, right?
Right.
Um I think when we're living in this hyper Bitcoinized world, we're not going to see things like that. We're going to see more of it, more of a decentralized process where you have a bunch of varying Bitcoin companies and it's not just, one bank, one
Right.
group of bankers picking the.
Right. It's more like a layer two, like Liquid. It's a federation of banks coming together. It's like,
Yeah,
it's Liquid is run by an oligarchy instead of a monarchy. So there's less custodial risk there.
yeah. I don't know if you noticed this, but it seems like Rizzo left Bitcoin Magazine. I noticed this week. I opened up my email on my typewriter and saw that I had an email from Casa.
Oh yeah. He's going to be writing. He's going to be tweeting about Satoshi's last post on Bitcoin Talk, but he's going to be doing that for Casa now instead of Bitcoin Magazine.
Yeah, he's going to lay out that's just an example of the decentralization of like the Bitcoin educators are moving away from central points like Bitcoin Magazine and Swan and kind of spreading across this broader ecosystem.
Yeah, exactly. We predicted that. We said that these influencers were going to spread out across to all these new companies, and it was going to really boost their presence on social media, and really they're going to really benefit from these influencers.
Yeah. Well, I think we should have higher expectations from our politicians going forward, especially with the way that they interact with Bitcoin. I mean, I think it's strange yet that it's not an expectation in the American people's mind that every cabinet member have their own Bitcoin podcast.
Yeah, you don't need it. Bitcoin podcast will replace like NPR and PBS. It's like we don't need to have it all aggregated on this one TV channel. We can just have it spread out and people can listen to it in whatever podcast form that they prefer.
Yeah, I mean, if you want an informed population, you need all the different branches of government to be doing separate Bitcoin podcasts for different journalists to listen to and then translate it to normal people. But then normal people can also listen to them themselves if they wanted to.
They need to put out at least 40 hours a week. So you can, at the very least, you can get 40 hours a week from the Bitcoin podcast that is published by, the Department of Urban Housing.
Well, I think this is how government should be funded. Like, I'm not a big fan of this taxation thing. One of the primary reasons why I'm not is because I've seen how it's been weaponized against smokers, who are some of the most heavily taxed people, if you're buying them the KYC route. Which is a shame if you are at this point. Like, you should know better. You've listened to enough of our podcasts to know not to do that. But yeah, I mean, I think Faunin could essentially replace the IRS, where all these different government agencies have podcasts, and their primary way to get funded is one, selling merch. I think in like 5 years, it's going to be cool to wear like FBI t-shirts to Bitcoin conferences, stuff like that. Because they're going to be on our side. They're going to be so orange pilled. They're not going to be seen as enemies or threats or non-compliant individuals. Will be able to see all their transactions on the blockchain and monitor them. But yeah, I mean, Found and Boost should be the way that we fund these different endeavors, and it should be based on how interesting of a podcast they run.
Right. At the end of the day, you could boil this down where Fountain could just, once everybody has a Bitcoin podcast, they could just take 25% of your boosts on Fountain, and that automatically goes to fund the U.S. Treasury. And if if your podcast gets millions of downloads and millions of sats and boosts, then, you just up that percentage of the payment split progressively like we do our tax system in the United States. But if you have under 1,000 downloads, then you should probably get, tax-free boosts. Like tax-free tips. You should get tax-free boosts.
I don't know why Fountain doesn't pay content creators yet. So I feel like they should do some sort of gamification where, like, they put a certain amount of sats in a pot, and depending on where you are on the weekly rankings,
right,
they'll dish it out to you.
I think this makes me think also of kind of maybe a fatal error on the part of Nostr, because Twitter made their if you zapped somebody's profile with Bitcoin, that was a tip. And the government right now, both sides, is trying to pass a law for tax-free tips, but they call them zaps on Nostr. So now, if you get zaps on Twitter, or you get tips on Twitter, those are going to be tax-free, whereas you're still going to get taxed for your zaps on Nostr because they're not tips.
I think that's like really a failure on the legislature to just like poorly distinguish language, because they should care about Nostr. They should be on Nostr. I mean, many of them are very like progressive, right?
Right.
And you'd think that a lot of them are homosexual, so you would think they'd want to be on the gay version of Twitter.
That's a good point. It makes you wonder why specifically why is Dennis Porter anti-Nostr? Why has he been so resistant to it?
Well, do you think it could be that he might be a closet homo hater? He might not be very tolerant or progressive.
That could be true. That would be a kind of a very controversial leak if that were to be true. I know the progressive Bitcoiners really champion Dennis Porter as well.
And as they should. I mean, like, even, I don't know. I think we need to have some sort of summit. Maybe like Michael Saylor could do a council to come up with what are actually cancelable opinions and perspectives that Bitcoiners have. Because I don't think there's enough standardization on this. We should have clearer guidelines. Like, okay, if you're not like pro-gay people, like that's cancelable. But I don't know if that's what the decentralized committee summit will come up with, because like I've also heard rumors that Michael Saylor's gay. So
right, like that is that's a really common rumor that goes around at Bitcoin conferences that he's gay. But some people they want to be single and just have Bitcoin when they're in their 50s and 60s. So that's his choice, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, it'd be pretty interesting if Michael Saylor was gay and then he had a council based on what was like appropriate and what wasn't to say on a Bitcoin podcast. And if being a homo hater, like Dennis potentially is a cancelable event, that could create a lot of tension in the general ecosystem and send everything, spiraling.
Well, there's no lack of disruption and tension in this community, but that would definitely be one that was dominating and trending for sure.
So I don't say this very often, but I'm kind of questioning whether some of the tenets that we learned in journalism school were unhelpful or incorrect. And one of the ones in particular I'm thinking about is this idea of tolerance, right?
Yeah.
So, tolerance is kind of confused. So, like, in journalism school, we learned that tolerance is essentially just believing whatever, the media apparatus wants you to believe, right?
Right, exactly. It could be weaponized.
Yeah. So, tolerant is liking gay people, but being intolerant is you have to inherently dislike them. Like, that's what it means to be tolerant, is to dislike people like potentially Dennis that don't like gay people.
Right.
Which seems kind of like illogically, or it's not very logically sound, because you would think that it would mean being tolerant of Dennis Porter and his beliefs.
It's hard to imagine looking at Dennis in that way, but Sometimes that's what is that's the way it has to go. So last big topic of the day, and this is a big one. So HBO looks like the TV is going to reveal on Tuesday who Satoshi is. Okay, what is your reaction to that announcement? Like, this kind of came out of nowhere.
Well, it's probably not going to be Craig Wright.
Right, legally it can't be. It can't be. They would get sued.
I know HBO. I don't know. It's pretty interesting. It's very interesting timing, that they want to put this out right now in such close proximity to the selection.
Do you think that this is the October surprise?
Could you imagine if Tim Walz is Satoshi?
I had it was a public, one of my tweets last week was, I would rather find out that Satoshi is the CIA than that he is French.
Yeah.
Dude, I would rather if he'd be CIA than Tim Walz.
What's worse, being French or French Canadian?
It's worse to be French Canadian because they're not even respected by people in France.
Interesting. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, one thing I'm kind of concerned about is I think there could be a high level or likelihood of North Korea doing something very impulsive here, because the North Korean people, for the last however long Bitcoin's been around, since 2009, they've thought that Kim Jong-un is Satoshi. And so it'd be pretty alarming for them to find out that it's somebody else.
There could be chaos in the streets, and if they were able to see that film or get that information, and it wouldn't necessarily be the citizens right away, but North Korea has a lot of hackers, and they thought that they were doing this on the orders of Satoshi. And if they find out that Satoshi's not Kim Jong-un, it's going to cause chaos in the hacker markets.
Imagine if HBO gets it wrong and they say it's not Kim Jong-un and Kim Jong-un is actually Satoshi, and what results from this is a signed message from a wallet address containing Satoshi's keys.
What do you think he would say?
That North Korea, best Korea. That would be my prediction.
Oh yeah, that would be a huge coup for North Korea. Can you imagine the stock market in North Korea that day?
Oh, I bet it'd be bonkers. I mean, I bet
they would take over South Korea right away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know why Bitcoiners have not taken this the stance, which is why aren't they pro North Korea like they are pro El Salvador? Doesn't make any sense. North Korea is one of the most hyper Bitcoinized countries in the world.
It's probably just intolerance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure Kim Jong-un's stack is bigger than all of ours combined.
No doubt about
every
it.
Employee at the Bugle.
But while Satoshi may be Kim Jong-un, it sounds like, based on the trailer, that HBO is going to say it's Adam Back. Why do you think that they would say that? Man,
this is very interesting. So, you brought this up with fundamentals recently, which is this concept of native marketing, right? There are some people out there that are theorizing that Blockstream is using this documentary as native marketing, because they haven't had so many issues with actually selling any profit or products profitably. That, if Adam Back is Satoshi, that gives so many more people a reason to buy the Jade hardware wallet.
Right. Yeah.
To use Liquid.
Yeah. Up until Craig Wright lost his lawsuit, I think Blockstream is marketing through BSV, saying that because all the BSV people would say that Bitcoin is compromised, that it's controlled by Blockstream, and that marketing wasn't doing a good enough job selling Jades. But in the Swan ad, the multi-sig ad, it only worked with the Jade, so you had to buy 2 Jades. and that didn't work. So now, if he's Satoshi, they might be able to finally, outsell the cold card.
Yeah. Some people might think that's a far reach to believe that, Blockstream is paying BSVers to say that they control Bitcoin, but we've seen many different groups essentially fund their opposition to discredit them, right?
Right.
And to make themselves look more notorious.
Right. Like some people might say that like funding BSVers to sell your product is bad marketing, and that makes it far fetched. But
Yeah.
if anybody is bad at marketing, it's Blockstream, so they could possibly have used that strategy.
Well, I mean, this could be like, what the ATF has done for years, which is, work with and fund, and the FBI as well, is, fund all of these neo-Nazi white supremacist groups, to essentially justify their jobs. And that's kind of
Right.
like what Blockstream's doing. If Adam Back is Satoshi, they're kind of justifying their jobs. They're saying our products, our Bitcoin mining node, our hardware wallet, our satellite dish, they're all, legitimate products. Like we're justifying our jobs.
Right. Yeah. It's well, Bill, that reveal is coming on Thursday. So tomorrow, by the time you listen to this, Tuesday. So we might do a live stream for the Satoshi reveal. So if you're interested in that, let us know, and we'll see if we can get that done. But are you ready to go into the boost for the week?
Yeah, I totally forgot. Did we talk about the Army recruiting ad?
Yeah, at the very beginning, but it was very ahead of its time.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's get in the boost then. So this last week's episode, Orange Berets March In. So our first boost was from High Hash Rate. I assume this was Mike. Could have been Dan. I don't know, but I was giving Mike a hard time about listening to Bitcoin podcasts and how to check in, how to show your attendance. And so I assume this is Mike who says, "I'm listening to my 40 hours of Bitcoin podcast. Salute." Good on you, Mike. I don't know when that episode is going to come out, but yeah, I was essentially giving Mike a hard time for not listening to enough podcasts and talking about the importance of it on the episode.
Yeah, man, I'm excited to hear you on another podcast. So make sure you share that when your interview with High Hash Rate comes out. The next one is from classic foe of the show, follower of the show, Miss Holla. She's back in the boost. She boosted us 20,000 sats. Just a great episode. Rather sexist. Maybe there should be more women in the space. If you weren't all dicks, maybe I should do a podcast to displace you. Well, thank you for the boost, Miss Holla. I disagree that it was sexist, but if you want to try and be better than the people, I wish you luck.
There's a lot of young people these days, and I'm just saying that because of her profile picture, not because of Now you dispute that she's young. You say that she's actually Nancy Grace, which is believable. But I kind of feel like going off of your theory is kind of like refusing to use somebody's proper pronouns. Like maybe she identifies as a young woman.
You got
so
me.
It's a little bit. Yeah, that's why I'm taking this perspective. But like, they believe that like objective journalism is sexist, and I think that's really problematic. I don't know. This is probably coming from like TikTok or something.
Yeah.
Why these young people believe this stuff. The one thing I forgot what I was gonna say. All right, never mind. Next one is from our good friend Fundamentals, who says, "Keep moving the ball forward. Great stuff and great closing song. I want my flying car." Man, did you see last night that your song is trending on Wavlake again? You were
Girls
at like
on Spaces.
Yeah, Girls on Spaces.
I got a DM from a guy in Nostra telling me how much you like the song, so it must have been a result of that.
So Flying Cars is at number 1 right now,
Nice.
and Girls on Spaces is at number 4. And Girls on Spaces has been consistently trending in like the top 40 ever since release.
Oh yeah,
Um,
I'm glad that. Oh yeah, it's David Tarr. It's me, but it's you. Is number 5, and that's who messaged me to tell me you like my song.
yeah, I mean that's so the Bugle Weekly, the Bugle in general, we're really revolutionizing music related to big. We're putting out thermodynamically music over on Wavlake, and it's pretty cool. And the more you boost us over there on our songs, the more that they trend, and the more other people find thermodynamically music. So
Yeah.
appreciate all the boosts. Both on, I mean, it's the same thing with boosting us on this show. More people find thermodynamically sound music, but yeah, I hope, like, if we're gonna get Fundamentals' Flying Car, you need to fucking boost our music in this show.
Hell
That's
yeah.
like a fundamental truth. Um, it's the objective journalism at work right here telling you that. So let's
Yeah.
get in the car.
Let's do it. It looks like I think you skipped over, at least on my screen. We got the next one, 10,093 sats from Shadrach, friend or good buddy Shadrach. He says, "We are Legion," with a cigarette. Oh yeah.
Yeah, Shadrack's a big fan of our thermodynamically sound music, and as well as selling non-KYC cigarettes or buying them.
And we're a big fan of Shadrach.
Shadrack likes to smoke his cigarettes thermodynamically sound, and I appreciate that about him.
Oh yeah.
The next one is from Orange Mart for 5,000 sats, and Orange Mart says, salute hashtag Orange Berets. I wouldn't be surprised if Orange Mart becomes like the central location, the meeting ground for the Orange Berets.
Kind of like their training simulator.
Yeah, I mean, there's like, you go into Southern America for the schools on Americas. Like, if you want to go figure out how to destabilize Latin America, you can go to one of those schools. I forgot where they operated those. I'll have to go back and do some more reading. But if you want to learn how to be the elite of Bitcoiners, you can go to Orange Mart.
Oh yeah. Works the next one is from another good friend, frequent Bisher, Abile. He says, "Thank you for the great advice. The Bugle team makes the 40 hours per week goal that much easier to reach." Really glad that Dave Miles finally listening to 40 hours a week. I know he was skimping a lot on his 40-hour requirement, but he stopped being lazy, and he's back on it.
Well, if you want to be like a high functioning, high testosterone Bitcoiner, you got to listen to 40 hours a week. There's no half-assing it. Got to pick up the pace. Like, if you want to, I don't know. I feel like listening to 80 hours a week is kind of like taking anabolic steroids. Like, it's almost cheating.
Well, if you listen on 1.5 speed, you can do it.
But yeah, anyways, thank you everybody for the boost this week. Thank you for not stealing journalism. We had one
more. We do
at
the bottom there. Yeah, it's looks like it's Arabic writing, so I can't read it. But JKB kind of is what it looks like. I don't know. It says Greek dialogue. I can confirm total BTC inside Burkas. Custody is higher than Sailors, as it is real Bitcoin. Also, great song. So thank you. It sounds like that one comes from the Middle East.
So what you're looking at is not a boost, but it's also pretty great, which is somebody posted us on Noster, which super cool. We had Dave, I think, who did a clip, did my clip of the Cypherpunk Awakens last week and put it on there on Noster as well.
Nice.
But that's like a huge way to like help us. We want people posting, and there's like a lot of discussions around people being concerned with all this development on Noster, on whether or not the devs over there are trying to make it not gay anymore. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to call it gay Twitter for much longer if they keep on developing these cool features like this. Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in this week. Thank you for the boost, and we'll catch you next week on the Bugle Weekly.
Later.
Wake up, hungover from low and hookers the night before. Pop some Adderall and get me out of bed and walk over to the shower door. I hold my slung in my hand and start stroking it as I look in the mirror. Get ready for a press conference, a climax as I think about myself on TV without fear. The reporters wanna know why we are blowing up the Middle East. Wait, the audience wanna know why they can't have a bigger feast. Man, this is such a pain being a politician, so much responsibility. Short and stock on inside info because democracy is civility. Standing in front of the reporters, my dick is getting a little bit hard. Think about people who are watching me on the TV, man, I know they are a bunch of tards. Get a text from Epstein, get a text from Diddy. My phone is blowing up, gross fantasies make me giddy. I laugh as I think about all the dead kids in Ukraine. Thinking about lunch where the Lockheed lobbyists will get brain. Hop on Twitter to slander my political rival. Gotta make him look real bad for my own survival. Can't stop thinking about sex and myself, thinking about getting a midget, those sexy elves. I can't get enough time to look at myself in the mirror. Why is it considered a crime to have corrupt and morals so clear? This is the life of a politician, keeping secrets and telling lies. Life spinning past me, oh how time flies. I love how people love me even though I'm a piece of shit. I know that I am the definition of hypocrite, but I don't really care because I get what I want. Being above the law is something that I could flaunt. My constituents can't afford taxes or to own a home, but we tax them so we can continue funding the Iron Dome. There's crisis domestically, but I'd rather do fraud abroad. Don't dare to tell me my logic's flawed. Standing in front of the reporters, my dick is getting a little bit hard. Thinking about people who are watching me on the TV, man, I know they are a bunch of tards.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of the Bugle Weekly. We'll see you next week.
Ha 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 ha.